Hello, my name is Emily Hemphill, and today I will be presenting my Journalism 491 capstone project titled Shaping Solar in Southwest Virginia. So, a quick overview of what I will be discussing is I will go over the background around my project and then cover some of the research methods that I used throughout my project, and then I will go to my findings. So just some quick background on my project. On October 12th of 2022, Pivot Energy, a solar company, proposed to build a 5 megawatt ground-mounted solar farm on 35 acres of farmland in Shawsville, Virginia. And as you can see over here in the picture is the outlined part of where the solar farm would be. So in my project, I focused on three main focus points. I focused on the community opposition to this project. I also covered Pivot Energy's actions in how they handled the proposal and discussions with the community members, as well as the Board of Supervisors to the county. And then I also focused on the government response to this proposal and how they facilitated conversations between the community and Pivot Energy's proposal. So, my capstone objective was through the lens of local activist Crystal Mello, I analyzed these three key aspects of the proposal in Shawsville in order to determine how to best navigate the issue of rural renewable energy projects. And my final product was a 5,000 word long form article. So, there were three main research methods that I used throughout my project. The first one was interviews, the second several case studies, and then three was analyzing government response. So some of the people who I interviewed included Crystal Mello, who I interviewed in order to learn her background as well as her approach to activism and worldview in order to write this piece through her perspective. I also interviewed several community members and local landowners in order to gather their opinions and how they had handled the proposal. I also interviewed Emily Satterwhite, who is a associate professor and director of Appalachian Studies at Virginia Tech University, which is nearby. And she provided a lot of context on the role of government in the proposal process, and she also facilitated several discussions between locals and Pivot Energy. And then I also interviewed Emily Piontek, who is the Virginia Energy Democracy Field Coordinator for Appalachian Voices, which is a nonprofit located in the area focused on renewable energy projects in Appalachia, as well as protesting the Mountain Valley Pipeline. And she explained a lot of shared solar projects and bringing clean energy into Appalachia. So, another main part of my research was case studies, and these are two prominent case studies that I discuss in my article and also that helped me to better understand the larger picture outside of Shawsville. And so the first one was titled Community Benefits and Community Acceptance of Multifunctional Solar Farms in the Netherlands. And this was a case study that was very similar to what was going on in Shawsville in rural communities, although it was in Netherlands. And it talked about two types of community compensation that an energy company can provide in order to garner more community support. The first being monetary goods, which can come in the form of rental income, reduction of energy prices, as well as a community benefit fund, or public goods such as a community center, recreational facility, or perhaps providing environmental enhancement services for the community. And this case study also identified three factors that influence the effectiveness of these benefits in order to increase community acceptance of solar farms. The first being rural land use and connection to agriculture. And this is talking about having a strong sense of the productive use of a land that would be undermined with an energy project, which is something that was seen in the Shawsville case, as the land that Pivot Energy proposed to put the solar farm on what is traditionally farmland. The second aspect that this case study talked about is profiting off of this farmland, and then as well as the pursuit of profit. And this means how the money from the solar farm will be used in order to benefit the community. And then the second case study that I analyzed uh, was titled What Shapes Community Acceptance of Large-Scale Solar Farms. And this case study really helped me to more critically examine what all was unfolding between the town of Shawsville and Pivot Energy, particularly in the Montgomery County Board of Supervisor meetings where a lot of these discussions were held. And this case study analyzed more of the distributional and procedural justice in the solar farm project process. And so it talks about distributive justice, which could be the unfair distribution of benefits. And in the case of solar farms, this can be where the energy company is coming in and using local land and then not providing enough compensation for the perhaps environmental, aesthetic, or other issues that the community will have to deal with the new solar farm, as well as the procedural justice in the situation, which is where the community members may feel as though they do not have enough of a say in the decision making process. And so this case study talked about both of these in both of these forms of justice in the case of building solar farms in rural areas and how to best go about ensuring that the community feels that they have a sense of justice in both of these cases. And then when it comes to government, there are several aspects that I had to look at for my project. The first being House Bill 1083, shared solar programs. And this bill was going through the Virginia state legislature throughout this whole year as I was writing my article. And this would have established shared solar programs in Virginia and made more statewide regulations and processes for shared solar projects like pivots. And this bill actually passed the Senate on February 7th of 2023. It received 35 yeses and 5 nos. However, when it went over to the House of Delegates, it was voted to stay in the House of Delegates Committee on Commerce and Energy on February 22nd of 2023. And it is most likely going to remain and die in this committee just due to the lack of support within the House. And then also, I spent a lot of time looking at the Montgomery County Board of Supervisors, as this was the local board that would have had the final say over the Pivots project. And there were 3 meetings held where Pivot went to speak with the Montgomery County Board of Supervisors in October and December of 2022, and then March in 2023, where they revised their proposal and brought it before the community and the board. And there were several discussions had between community members and Pivot Energy. And then a third aspect of government that I examined was the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit, as there was a court case going through at the time of my project between Mountain Valley Pipeline and the U.S. Court of Appeals, as local nonprofits and other activism groups in West Virginia were suing the Mountain Valley Pipeline, which was another aspect of my project that I talked about. So it was important for me to examine what was going on with the pipeline at the time. So now, finally, I would like to read the conclusion of my article, some of which you can see here on display. And this will be able to provide a better sense of my project and some of the findings that I found through my research. There are 2 main reasons why Shawsville opposes the project. For one, they felt ignored and neglected by individuals meant to represent them for years. State lawmakers dismissed this part of the state as majority Republican and blue collar. As House of Delegates Majority Leader Terry Kilgore said for an article in Virginia Business, "Sometimes I've even said this state seems to stop at Charlottesville." Secondly, having the Mountain Valley Pipeline forced down their throats had been stoking the embers of discontent and frustration long before Pivot came to Shawsville. They just happened to be the only entity that didn't have enough protection from the flames. Crystal was left to wonder if the voices of her community had been heard in Richmond, or if the pipeline hadn't left such deep scars and distrust of the energy sector, if the possibility of a solar farm wouldn't seem as unnatural or threatening. She would have to bide her time and be patient, because America's energy sector was just getting started with Appalachia. Pivot's proposal was the first, but certainly not the last, to make its way to Shawsville. While the results of the solar farm case may be disappointing, another recent ruling rapidly raised Crystal's spirits. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit unanimously vacated the pipeline's 401 clean water certification. The decision could potentially halt any construction from continuing even in small towns like Shawsville. Though bringing renewable energy to Appalachia is a key objective of the groups like Protect Our Water, Heritage, and Rights, Crystal had to accept its impending defeat and place blocking the pipeline from expanding its scope of destruction at the top of her to-do list. Trying to keep Southwest Virginia out of the grasp of the oil and gas industry may be a solid first step in converting the area to clean energy. We are so fortunate with what we have here, Crystal explained. It's so worth protecting because I look at Appalachia as such a sustainable swath that more people are going to migrate this way as they get flooded or burnt out in the West or losing ocean lines in Florida all the way to Maine. On a drive the morning of April 3rd, following the Fourth Circuit's final decision, Crystal was driving down Route 460, the road that snakes its way from Roanoke to her home. She drove by Father and Gay's property, where cows slowly raised their heads to stare at her beat-up Jeep as it rolled by, unaware of how close they had come to being replaced by solar panels and sheep. She continued through more of the scenic farmland and mountains that she had spent years sacrificing herself for, and knew that fierce desire to protect would never change. Crystal had never been taught how to turn away from the hard things life threw one's way, but she knew she would have to learn how to reshape that fire always burning within her. Just as she was nearing the edge of the Shawsville line, she passed the once empty field that was now scattered with massive piping and other construction equipment. She let herself feel a sense of glee knowing those pipes would remain above ground, at least for the time being. Then her smile turned a little more mischievously devious, and she picked up her phone to take a picture of the land she loved. In it, she stuck up a middle finger to the helicopters hovering over the pipeline work site. Here is a link to my article, the full version, if you would like to read it further. Thank you so much for your time.